Greetings and welcome to the Culture Ward, where we dissect and dismember pop culture in all its forms. Before we begin, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and help us grow the channel. It really means a lot to us. Join the conversation in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoy the content. Thank you for joining us once again for the weekly wrap-up, where we dive into some recent pop culture news without exerting too much effort. As always, let us know if there's any important stories we missed. Now let's get into it. On June 26, 1997, an unknown British author by the name of Joanne Rowling published a young adult fantasy adventure novel called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, later modified for us dumb Americans to the Sorcerer's Stone. Much to her surprise, it would grow into the best-selling book series in the history of civilization. 6 additional novels followed over the next decade, with combined sales eventually topping 600 million units and touching off a multimedia empire and global cultural phenomenon. Very early in the series, the film rights were bought by Warner Brothers, and from 2001, with the release of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, to 2011, with the release of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, 8 total films were released. The movies, too, would break records, earning over $7 billion at the box office, and becoming one of the highest-grossing movie franchises in history. And the films were generally well received by critics, the general public, and even hardcore Potter fans. The casting, especially for the adult characters, was damn near perfect, with iconic roles like Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid, Maggie Smith as Professor McGonagall, and Alan Rickman as Professor Severus Snape. Now, the films weren't without their criticisms. One of the primary gripes was the inability of the films to maintain perfect fidelity to the books, especially in the later installments when the books were much longer than the first few. Now, this criticism was generally tempered, however, because everyone appreciated that the movies couldn't have all the details from the books while still being manageable in length and scope. The Order of the Phoenix, for example, the 5th book in the series, was over 800 pages long and dense with details. For the movie to be a perfect retelling, it would have had to be 6, 7, 8 hours. So certain details and characters and plot lines were modified, shortened, or outright deleted from several of the books in order to make accessible movies. Now, this limitation was sort of addressed for the final book, The Deathly Hallows, by splitting the movie into 2 parts, allowing for much more of the story to be told, but real-world problems and restrictions prevented them from doing that for every story, including the constant aging of the child actors. At any rate, while the films were enjoyable and mostly adequate adaptations of the source material, many Potterheads longed for a more faithful adaptation of the books. Prayers were ostensibly answered in 2023 when Warner Brothers announced that a Harry Potter series had been ordered by HBO, featuring an entirely new cast and designed to focus each season on a single installment in the book series. Further details emerged, assuring fans that the series would be a faithful adaptation. However, when casting news began leaking, some people began questioning their commitment to fidelity. While most of the casting announcements had been positively received, such as John Lithgow as Albus Dumbledore, Nick Frost as Hagrid, and Janet McTeer as Professor McGonagall, for instance, one casting choice in particular has kind of pissed off a lot of people: Papa Isidore as Severus Snape. I did a video a couple months back about why Isidore is a terrible choice for Snape, so I won't completely rehash it here, but a shortened version is necessary for context. First, the character of Snape was explicitly described as an unattractive, pale, sallow-skinned man with a hooked nose and curtains of greasy black hair, often appearing the color of sour milk, or occasionally as marble white, none of which can be used to describe Papa Isidore. But even putting aside the explicit physical description of the character in the books, as well as the iconic portrayal of Snape by Alan Rickman in the films, there are unfortunately many problems that arise from a narrative perspective as well, especially considering the way many of the other characters interact with Snape throughout the story. In context, race-swapping the character will have unavoidable implications on the story of both Snape himself and several of the main characters. In other words, suffice it to say, there are many valid criticisms of casting a black person to play this explicitly white character. However, as unsurprising as the evening sunset or the broken promise of a politician, every valid criticism is being ignored by the big-brained Hollywood crowd, and claims of racism are being hurled at anyone who objects. Because of course they are. Most recently, Jason Isaacs, who played Lucius Malfoy in the original Harry Potter film series, spoke up. Harry Potter film star Jason Isaacs calls out racist fans over Papa Isidu's Snape casting backlash. Jason Isaacs is not here for the backlash over the casting of Papa Isidu in the role of Severus Snape in the Harry Potter series. The White Lotus Season 3 star who starred in the original Harry Potter franchise as Lucius Malfoy, and in a recent interview, called out fans who have an issue with Isidu taking on the role of Snape. He said, quote, "Papa Isidu is one of the best actors I've ever seen in my life. I've seen some people online who are being rude about him. What they're being is racist," Isaac said in an interview with Collider. "All the cast of the new Harry Potter TV series are amazing. They will be swallowing their tongues, hopefully, their digital tongues, when they see what Papa does on screen." The chatter on social media shifted to anti-trans activist and author J.K. Rowling as fans questioned her stance on the Isidu casting. Quote, "I don't have the power to sack an actor from the series, and I wouldn't exercise it if I did," Rowling posted on X, the microblogging platform formerly known as Twitter and now owned by Elon Musk. Quote, "I don't believe in taking away people's jobs or livelihoods because they hold legally protected beliefs that differ from mine." Goes on to say Alan Rickman portrayed the role of Snape in the original Harry Potter films. We know all that stuff. So, really short article where he just summarily brands everybody racists because Papa Isidu is a great actor. Okay. Just so superficial and stupid. So listen, I like Jason Isaacs. He was the perfect casting for Draco Malfoy's father in the films, and he is a talented actor. But he is as wrong as the rest of them are about this. While there are undoubtedly racists complaining about race, I would estimate that they make up an insignificant fraction of the people that are upset with this casting choice. Most criticism of race-swapping Snape is valid, and you ignore it while calling all those who object racists at your peril. Insulting your audience and dismissing their concerns rarely helps ratings. And it sucks. The other casting looks pretty good. The child actors look the part, even Hermione, who some think is too dark-skinned. I don't share that belief. Filming began this past week, and an early set photo shows Dominic McLaughlin, the child actor playing Harry Potter, in full costume, and he looks great. I really want to be excited about this project, but Snape is such an important character, and this casting decision so fundamentally affects his story and everyone else's. It's gonna be hard for me to get over. And I don't think I'm alone. What do you think? How do you feel about the upcoming Harry Potter series? Are you a racist who thinks Snape should be played by someone who looks more like Snape? Let me know in the comments below. Ed Warren, a self-taught demonologist, and his wife Lorraine, a self-professed clairvoyant, were famous paranormal investigators. They were both fascinated by the supernatural from an early age, and in 1952 founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, or the NESPR, dedicating their lives to investigating alleged hauntings and demonic activity. Over the next several decades, they investigated over 10,000 cases, including, perhaps most famously, the haunting of a house in Amityville, New York, which became the basis for the book and film, The Amityville Horror, in the 1970s. I think they remade the movie a few years ago, too. Anyway, the Warrens were introduced to a new generation with the Conjuring franchise, which is a gripping horror saga that retells some of their more popular cases, from the Perron family's haunted farmhouse to the Enfield poltergeist and a satanic cult-linked murder. The main trilogy consists of 3 films, The Conjuring in 2013, The Conjuring 2 in 2016, and The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It in 2021. Additionally, an entire franchise has been spawned, including spin-offs like Annabelle, The Nun, and The Curse of La Llorona, ultimately grossing over $2 billion combined. One of the spin-offs, Annabelle, has also morphed into its own trilogy, centering around a possessed porcelain doll that unleashes demonic terror, based on the real-life artifact in Ed and Lorraine Warren's Occult Museum. Anabelle, from 2014, directed by James Wan, introduces the doll, which is a gift from John Form to his expecting wife, Mia. A satanic cult then summons a demon which possesses the doll, unleashing terror on the young couple. The Warrens are seen only briefly near the end, taking possession of the doll. That was followed by Annabelle Creation in 2017, a prequel set in the 1950s which dives into the doll's origins. Basically, Samuel, a grieving doll maker, and his wife house orphaned girls after tragically losing their own daughter. A demonic entity posing as the spirit of their dead daughter inhabits a doll Samuel crafted and terrorizes the orphans. And finally, Annabelle Comes Home was released in 2019 and takes place inside the Warrens' own home. Set after the events of the first movie, Annabelle's locked artifact room is breached while Ed and Lorraine are out of the house, and their daughter is home with a babysitter. The doll's demonic influence awakens other haunted objects, unleashing chaos in the house. The Annabelle series has grossed over $800 million globally, thriving on its creepy premise and the ties to the Warrens' storied artifact room. The movie doll truly is a creepy-looking doll, but the doll in the Warrens museum that it's based on is, well, not so much. It's just a regular Raggedy Ann doll. It doesn't exactly exude fear. Anyway, besides their continuous casework, traveling around examining claims of paranormal activity, the Warrens also ran the New England Society for Psychic Research, which included the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, which houses artifacts that they collected from various cases. They also traveled around the country giving lectures and appearing at paranormal conferences. Ed died in 2006, and his wife Lorraine continued their work until her death in 2019. Since her death, the NESPR lives on, with other members picking up the mantle. And since May of this year, members have been touring the country with an exhibition show called, quote, Devils on the Run. Part of the exhibition is the display and discussion of artifacts from the Warrens Museum, including the infamous Annabelle doll. And it sure seems like she's carrying her curse with her. Not only did a famous antebellum plantation burn down during her stay in Louisiana, there was also a mass breakout from Orleans Parish Prison in New Orleans, and most recently, and most tragically, the sudden and unexpected death of one of Annabelle's handlers, Dan Rivera. Police share findings into Annabelle doll handler Dan Rivera's death. Paranormal investigator Dan Rivera died July 13th while touring with the so-called possessed Annabelle doll that served as inspiration for the Conjuring movies. Here's what police found at the scene. Police are clearing the air about the sudden death of Dan Rivera, the paranormal investigator who passed away while on tour with the supposedly haunted Annabelle doll. Dan was found dead on July 13th at a hotel in Gettysburg where the 54-year-old and the New England Society of Psychic Research, or NESPR, hosted a viewing of the mystifying toy, according to the Pennsylvania State Police. The decedent was discovered in his hotel room by co-workers. A police report released on July 16th read, "Nothing unusual or suspicious was observed at the scene. A cause of death has not been determined, pending an autopsy, per authorities." In the wake of Dan's death, his fellow investigators at the NESPR said in a July 15 press release that they were, quote, "still coming to terms with this profound loss. Dan was not only a vital part of our team for over a decade, but also a deeply compassionate, loyal, and dedicated friend," their statement read. "His caring nature and sense of purpose made a deep impact on everyone who had the privilege of knowing him." While they do not know what the future of NESPR will look like without Dan, the organization is still moving forward with their plans to tour Annabelle. Quote, "We believe with all our hearts that Dan would have wanted the work to continue. We will carry his spirit with us in everything we do." And then that just goes on to say NESPR was founded by demonologist Ed Warren and his wife Lorraine Warren, a trance medium. Their work, particularly with Annabelle, was determined by the couple to be demonically possessed, served as the basis for the Conjuring movie franchise with Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga playing the Warrens. So according to NESPR, Dan was a constant presence around Lorraine before her death in 2019. He worked closely with Lorraine Warren and remained by her side even as her health declined, the firm noted in its July 15th statement, always offering a steady hand and unwavering support. Typically, Annabelle is kept at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe. However, NESPR is currently offering what is advertised as a chilling experience with the doll as part of its Devils on the Run tour. The tour is slated to wrap up in Maine this September. Alright, so that's it. That's the story. It's a sad story. Now, I'm not much of a paranormal believer myself. Ed and Lorraine Warren were famous not only for their paranormal stories, but for their controversy, including some legal problems with Ed and an alleged 15-year-old mistress. The Amityville horror case in particular was determined to be an actual fraud perpetrated by the Lutz family. and most of the Warrens' cases lack any kind of verifiable evidence, relying heavily on Lorraine's so-called clairvoyant visions and anecdotal accounts. But they are certainly a favorite of paranormal investigators, and many believe them to have been sincere and good intention despite the monetization of their work. And you have to admit, there are a lot of coincidences surrounding that doll. Now, I don't want to make light of the death of Dan Rivera. It truly is a tragedy when a 54-year-old man dies, regardless of his cause of death. However, unfortunately for people my age, people in their 50s sometimes die of natural causes. And while it likely is just a coincidence that he happened to be on tour with the Annabelle doll when it happened, it is admittedly weird that it's just one thing in a string of unlucky and unlikely mishaps that have occurred during their travels in such a short time. And as unscientific and far-fetched as it is, I'm sure that it will only increase the credibility of the Warren stories in the minds of believers. If you are a fan of the Warrens and the whole Conjuring universe, there is a new Conjuring movie coming out this year on September 5th called The Conjuring Last Rites. It's the 4th installment in the Conjuring series and the 9th installment in the franchise as a whole. And it will have Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga reprising their roles as Ed and Lorraine Warren. So again, that comes out on September 5th, 2025. What about you? Do you believe Annabelle is cursed and wreaking havoc across the country? Are you going to go check out the exhibition if it comes to your town? Let us know in the comments. Stranger Things, the pop culture phenomenon that took the world by storm when it first premiered on Netflix in 2016, almost a decade ago. Its unique blend of sci-fi horror, a compelling character-driven narrative, and 1980s nostalgia bridged the gap between older and younger viewers, making it a huge success across generations. It was one of the first original streaming series to become a major hit, and in essence served to launch the streaming wars, proving that streaming content could be high quality, culturally relevant, and financially viable. For better or worse, Stranger Things led the way for entertainment companies to reimagine how content is created, which has, unfortunately, led to an oversaturation of content across dozens of platforms, most of which is simply terrible, but that's a topic for another discussion. Stranger Things Season 4 dropped back in 2022 and was seen by many as one of the best seasons, including me. Certainly the best season since Season 1 anyway. I know a lot of people give Seasons 2 and 3 a hard time, and not without good reason, but I thought, while 2 was better than 3, and both were weaker than 1, they also both had some positive moments. They were just too unfocused with unnecessary distractions and side plots and some rather goofy moments. But anyway, Season 4 was really good and ended on a pretty serious cliffhanger. Just prior to the release of Season 4, the series creators, the Duffer Brothers, announced that Season 5 would be the final season. Following the finale of Season 4 in the summer of 2022, it was then expected that the final season would arrive sometime around 2024, which was about par for the course with this show. However, as we all know, Hollywood shut down in 2023 for the SAG-AFTRA strikes that saved the entertainment industry.
That, FYI, was sarcasm.
Which also delayed Season 5 of Stranger Things. While it was announced that Season 5 would in fact premiere sometime in 2025, it wasn't until last month that the official release date was revealed, along with a kind of trailer, which we covered briefly in another video. They revealed that the season would consist of 8 episodes and that the release schedule would take place in 3 stages, with Volume 1, episodes 1 through 4, releasing on November 26th, that's the day before Thanksgiving. Volume 2, episodes 5 through 7, releasing on December 25th, Christmas Day, and the finale, episode 8, releasing on December 31st, New Year's Eve. The trailer that launched with the announcement was mostly a recap trailer, showing scenes from the first 4 seasons, with a very short and limited look at Season 5 content and not really revealing anything about the plot or story of Season 5. However, this week they released a new trailer with a bit more substance. Let's take a look together. Alright, so before we begin, let's just recap Season 4's finale. Recall that the gang and Hawkins are trying to stop Vecna, who's hunting teenagers, in order to open a gateway between Hawkins and the Upside Down. The gang infiltrates his lair in an attempt to burn his corporeal body while he's distracted with Max, who's being used as bait. 11 fights Vecna inside Max's mind, but she can't defeat him fully before he seemingly kills Max, who winds up in a coma. The gang does manage to damage Vecna, but he disappears. They can't find him. And at the very end of the season, we see that these giant fiery rifts open throughout Hawkins, and I guess that's setting up the final battle. Alright, so let's start the trailer. So it starts out with Steve in a van outside a radio station. He appears to be trying to send or receive a signal of some sort.
Burn commencing in 5, 4, 3. Come on. 2. And
Right, the gang is seemingly inside the radio station building, and we hear Mike Wheeler's voice announcing a burn commencing. I'm not sure what that means. Alright, and we get several shots of the military, who appear to have Hawkins locked down or quarantined or something. And downtown Hawkins is totally walled off. It looks like the library at the center of town is like ground zero. It appears to be like a gate to the upside down.
after what we've been through.
Alright, then we see Dustin visiting Eddie Munchin's grave. And recall that we met Eddie last season. He became a fan favorite. He died trying to create a distraction in the Upside Down, although his sacrifice was completely pointless. I thought that was stupid. But we see that someone has painted Burn in Hell on his headstone because Eddie was believed to be responsible for all the murders in Season 4. The dumb townspeople thought he was in a satanic cult and used his Satan powers to kill all those people.
This thing.
Alright, then we see Lucas visiting Max in the hospital, who's still in a coma. The official synopsis for Season 5 says that more than a year has passed since Season 4, so Max has been in a coma for a long time, apparently.
It ties us together.
Alright, so we see the gang all together again, something that has been kind of absent for a couple of seasons, really. The kids have been basically scattered, so it's nice to see them all come back together for the finale. Look how old they all look. Remember how young they were in Season 1? I think they're all in their 20s now. I guess that's how time works, huh?
Forever.
Alright, we get our first glimpse of Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor herself, who plays a character named Dr. K, I think. We don't know much about her yet, just that she appears to be military. We get a shot of Lucas holding Max's unconscious body while they hide from demo dogs. This scene's kind of reminiscent of the scene in Jurassic Park when the kids hide from raptors in the kitchen. Right now we see the Wheeler matriarch Karen holding what I'm guessing is Mike and Nancy's little sister Holly underwater in the bathtub, I think. Apparently one of the plot lines in this season is that Holly goes missing. I don't know if this is before or after that.
Wherever this blood leads. I need you to fight one last time.
So we hear Hopper's voice, I think, saying, "Whatever this blood means, I need you to fight one last time." And Nancy's washing someone's blood off her hands. This might be forecasting the death of one of our main characters. It could be Jonathan or Steve or Holly or someone that has Nancy distressed. I think everyone expects some heartbreak in this final season.
Let's end this, kid.
Hopper with 11 saying let's end this. Of course she has to fight one last time. I just hope they pull back on her power level some, or mix it up at least. Her fights have become kind of formulaic at this point. She shows up, points her hands at the bad guy, and defeats him with her nosebleed powers. I hope it's a little more nuanced than that here.
Found you.
Okay, so there's a lot going on in this trailer. Then we finally see Vecna saying, "I found you." And he shows up looking like, Groot?
I am Groot!
I don't know, new body obviously, looking more like a tree than his previous fleshy form. And that's it. Alright, well, it looks good. It at least looks interesting. There are a lot of elements from the previous seasons, maybe an effort to tie everything together in this final season. It does seem a little busy, but I kind of would expect that. There was a lot of threads left hanging. Now, I've really enjoyed this show. Not only is the premise fun, but I am a child of the 1980s. Not only did I grow up with the pop culture elements of the show, the music, the fashion, the aesthetics, but a lot of the show's story and plot has been inspired by, sometimes directly lifted from, 1980s fiction. From Stephen King's It to The Goonies to Stand By Me, E.T., Poltergeist, Nightmare on Elm Street, all these things that I grew up with, and I still love to this day. It's a show custom made for my demographic. I must admit that I nearly lost interest in the 3+ years between seasons 4 and 5, but I'm trying to rekindle my excitement. And this trailer helps with that. It's a good trailer, and I'll certainly be checking this show out. And I do hope it goes out with a bang. Stranger Things not only harkens back to my childhood, but also harkens back to a time not so long ago when quality television was being developed, something that has suffered severely in recent years. So it'll be nice to once again show Hollywood that you can make good content. If you just try. I guess we'll see in a few months. Fingers crossed. What do you think about Season 5 of Stranger Things? Are you looking forward to Stranger Things likely dominating the entire holiday season this year? Join the conversation in the comments below. And that brings us to the end of another installment of the weekly wrap-up here in the Culture Ward. What did you think of the news stories? Are there any other stories you'd like us to delve into next time? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Bye for now. We hope to see you next time in the Culture Ward.